Hey, it's all, and welcome back to Dragon Weekly, where the dragon. Do your community a favor and hit that like button, subscribe for more of this copium-filled dragon content, and let's jump straight into the Dragonflight beta. This week's build and recent news have answered some important questions about Dragonflight crafting, a subject that I've never broached on before. It started off with the team adding profession vendors to the max level realm, leading to players flooding the capitals to check out what's good and what is best in slot. The first thing that we noticed, the item level of the gear has been reduced, prompting some foot-and-mouth reactions which are like the worst. Thankfully, less than a day later, a blue post clarified a few very important pieces of information. First, since I already started mentioning it, the change to crafted gear item level is only one step in a larger shifting of item level at endgame. The short version of it is like this. The best crafted gear will be designed to be approximately 7 item levels below the best gear from Mythic raids. In Shadowlands terms, it's the equivalent of being able to craft an item level 304, the same item level as the best Mythic Plus people can get from the vault. I wouldn't worry so much about crafted gear straight up invalidating other content like Mythic Plus though. In the same thread, it was explained that maybe, just maybe, well-coordinated guilds with a robust team of crafters can start making rank 4 and 5 Mythic pieces kind of early in the tier, not to mention the sparks of ingenuity which will control the supply of crafted gear for all players overall. The long version is a little bit more complicated, so strap in. I'm going to break it down. Within a raid difficulty like Mythic, there's a range of 10 item level between all 8 bosses. Right now, the first boss in the raid has an item level of 424. The second through 4th bosses drop gear with an item level of 427. The 5th and 6th bosses drop 431s, and the last 2 bosses drop 434s. So this is very different. You probably have takes to share already, but just jot those down because I have a lot more show to go. Anyway, folks like me got scared because the item level of perfect crafted gear was basically nerfed this week from a maximum item level of 427 down to 418. Now left alone, this would have broken the promise made a while back that crafted gear would encroach that mythic territory. But in an updated blue statement, item levels across the board, not just crafted gear but everywhere else, it's all being adjusted, and crafted gear was just the first step. The desired intent, according to them, is to have perfect crafted gear to have an item level still equal to the first few bosses of the raid, which is what it was before the so-called nerf. That means in a future build, the current raid and other loot tables will have their item levels decreased by 9 as well. So overall, it's just an adjustment and not a nerf to anyone in particular. If anything, this is kind of, them curbing down on item level bloat and everything is just fine, maybe. The numbers I'm showing down here are still just estimates. This is mostly to help you understand where crafted gear is going to stand in comparison to raid drops. What's reassuring though is that we have an updated vision of Blizzard's intent, that basically crafted gear will be bona fide mythic gear, except in the case of, those last couple bosses having higher item level drops. But that's what we're sort of accustomed to in Shadowlands, where the last 2 or 3 bosses did have a higher item level than anything else. Only now the range just covers, like all the bosses. This also puts into question, what about Mythic Plus? What's the maximum item level that they will get access to via the Great Vault? Not sure. History though suggests that it's going to be the same as, crafted gear, 7 item level below what's possible in Mythic. Now Wowhead is speculating the same, but we don't have 100% confirmation yet. This actually maybe bodes kind of well for Mythic Plus folk because among those who are gear crafters, it's a great way to augment their gearing. Obviously there's going to be great gear to get from the vault, but it's also the vault, and sometimes the full dungeon table can feel pretty frustrating. And what's happening here is that mythic level crafting is being propped up to be the bad luck protection that folks have asked for, but instead of an NPC, it's going to be a player. So if you're not getting the kind of gear or the stats that you want, if you're fed up, Okay, gather some materials and get it crafted. But there's still more news. In a following statement, the WoW team finally answered this person's obnoxious question of who needs to provide what when it comes to crafting orders, which, by the way, are still not testable in this build, which would be upsetting if not for them finally getting an answer to my age-long question. In their statement, the WoW team said that basically the client, that is the one who's making the order, must supply all of the bind-on pickup reagents, and the crafter cannot do that. That includes the Spark of Ingenuity. That's the kind of time-limited reagent that we'll maybe get every week or so. It includes the Primal Chaos that we find during regular content. You can think of the drop rate and frequency of that sort of like Blood of Sargeras. And the client, not the crafter, but the client must provide the items that upgrade the gear's item level. The only thing that the crafter can optionally apply would be the non-soul-bound stuff, the ores, the metals, the missives, and other reagents. The good news is that you'll finally stop hearing me talk about this because, well, now we know. The bad news? Well, I kind of just told you. The number of crafted epics that a person can wear is going to be limited to how many sparks of ingenuity they possess. Now, getting them is pretty easy, but early on, it's going to feel, well, time-gated. Now that we just about have a full picture, I'll be able to share my thoughts in a nice big compendium separate video, so stay tuned for that. The bad news about all this is that the realm of Mythic crafted gear is going to be limited to those who play at a Gladiator or a top Keystone or a Mythic raid level. And to be blunt, you, who might be a solo player, who might be putting tens and tens of hours a week, sure, you can craft strong heroic gear with the exact stats that you want. That's cool. But the highest item level gear that you'll be able to find is going to be like, what, from the world boss, Mythic BOEs if they're a thing, and maybe if you run it, the Mythic Dungeon weekly event. In a copium-filled world, you might be happy enough being able to craft and refine Mythic level gear for those Mythic players, pocket that money, and then like buy a carry to get you those Mythic reagents. It kind of fulfills the roleplay of the rich merchant who can merc out a team. My opinion though, that doesn't really sit very well with me. To be fair, this is the farthest that we've gotten with crafted gear. Solo players can now get access to full heroic. Every slot, customized stats. And yeah, that's pretty awesome. A min-maxer is going to do better with that than the BOEs and the raid boss loot that I mentioned. It's still coming up a bit short though, but I think it's a matter of perspective. Now, speaking for me, I try to run a 15 each week so I can get a 304 piece in the Great Vault, and I get it pretty easily. It feels kind of good. And in Dragonflight, it's sure going to feel a lot faster to do keys for high-end gear. There are a lot of folks who just don't do that though. Maybe they just don't have a choice. I know the comments below are going to reliably bring up the talking point asking why do players feel entitled to Mythic gear when they don't run Mythic content. But the way that I see it, it's less about the gear, it's about the accomplishment that they did something that felt hard. I don't mean to speak for anyone here, I kind of am, but I don't think that they want to be entitled. They want a journey. They want a pain in the ass path towards that peak, a Mythic equivalent to crafting. I think that ultimately players want to log in and work towards a goal that feels good when that goal is accomplished. That has nothing to do with trying to take your spot running 20s or Mythic raids. So far, no one has truly played through Dragonflight yet, has experienced the new player economy, or endured the reputation and specialization grinds with crafting. Right now we're just playing with vendors, pretending to know what we're talking about. The question is, in this narrow lane of just professions and crafting, is it going to feel good to complete even that perfect heroic set? I know it's easy to say no because we can look at a sheet and say, no, there's a 13 item level difference between me and the Mythic people. Now I like to keep an open mind. I'd like to think that if not for me raiding and the occasional key, maybe I would be happy knowing that I can log in and be okay, I'm going to work on getting a few more spec points, and then I can finally recraft my shield to have the exact stats that I want, and then I'm going to switch to my miner and start gathering for a big engineering push. I mean, that sounds like a role-playing game to me, but now I want to read what you have to say. Moving on, but not really. The folks over at Wowhead noticed a change in the artwork for the Creation Catalyst UI, and yeah, sure enough, it's been changed to reflect Dragonflight content. Whether players have to return all the way there to alter their gear, though, is uncertain. It'd be super inconvenient, right? But it's also a special place, not unlike needing to go to a unique anvil. Whatever the case, it's not ready for testing. Right now, the Catalyst still reflects Season 4 content, so I'm gonna bring the subject up now, just like how we brought up the subject of Sand-worn gear back before Season 3. Will crafted epics be usable in the Creation Catalyst? Now, again, let's have an open mind here because I think that this can seem pretty elegant. First, there's the precedence. Solo players got access to tier thanks to Sand-worn gear in Season 3 without a complaint to be had, really. In fact, folks campaigned for Sand-worn relics to be account-wide. That eventually happened too, and World of Warcraft didn't turn into like this tier-filled hellscape. So how would this work? It would actually work very similarly to PvP and Mythic Plus gear. Using the Catalyst to turn crafted gear into tier, it would disable the ability to change the stats or up the quality or add an embellishment, and if the gear already had any of that stuff in there, it would be removed. Meanwhile, it can still be upgraded through recrafting and item level upgrades, so essentially it's going to be like the same gear that other people can get, and it's going to be upgradable in its own way, just like Mythic Plus and PvP gear in Seasons 3 and 4. And that's pretty much it, really. Sparks of ingenuity are already going to be in place to stop players from immediately hard grinding their way to getting a 4-piece bonus like Day 0. Crafted gear isn't the only game in town though. Storm gear from outdoor content, is that going to be usable with the Catalyst too? Or what about the gear that comes from reputation vendors? Now, these are not questions that are going to like really dictate or alter our gameplay, I don't think, but now that we're starting an expansion with the Creation Catalyst, there's going to be new questions that I think we should get answers for. Let's do an eye cleanse now and check out some visuals brought into test with this build. First is the login screen, which is, dude, it's a stunner. The in-game version of this shot, it's a little bit obscured, thanks a lot trees, but the differences, of course, we can walk through it. The Elite Gladiator tints have showed up on the Appearance tab. This one happens to be the Paladin tints, complete with lightning shoulders, and you can take a look at the rest over on Wowhead. As predicted, the crafted set is in fact a tint of the same sets found by doing the Storm Assault and Outdoor World PvP. Completing the set is going to take some time, but I do like the colors. I think it'll be worth it, especially later on when I can start mixing and matching stuff. This here is the plate version of what's going to be your dungeon gear. There are a bunch of other tints that you'll find through honor and random drops. What might look familiar to you now, the quest gear also features a number of tints. My favorite here for plate is the Primal Storm set, which definitely means that I'm going to be farming the crap out of these assaults, if only for the appearances. I'm a big fan of the contrasting tones here, unlike the questing set, which is charming, but it's a little bit plain. Okay, back to rambling. Is Dragonflight gonna be ready for launch? The chatter across the internet this week, especially among endgame focused creators, has been a resounding no, it is not ready, citing what still needs to be tested like talent changes and bugs and balancing. It's unfair to say that work isn't being done, but whether it's November 28th or December 13th for a launch date, or hell, even if it's like 1 minute before the ball drops to celebrate 2023, there is a lot for Blizzard to still cover. Now, it's not like the team hasn't been doing work. A fun little exploit that let me descend upside down, yeah, that was a thing for a while. That was fixed pretty quick. But here's a list of items to reinforce doubt. I don't mean to doomspeak here, but I want to illustrate the uphill battle that Blizzard's facing. In chronological order, there is the pre-patch experience, whatever that's going to be. It feels as if there are going to be events that provide catch-up gear for returning players, so we're going to see how that goes. There's the UI overhaul, which has been updating pretty much every week, and it's not the end of the world if it continues to be refined in major and minor patches going forward. I just hope they don't throw their hands up and call it done as soon as the pre-patch drops. Talents will at least need to be fully functional before the pre-patch, but odds are good that they'll be worked on all the way up until Season 1 begins, and then probably afterwards too. The tiny bit of relief that players will get this time around is that if they need to switch to an alt, there are far fewer steps for an alt to be considered endgame ready thanks to there being no borrowed power. Because remember, in Shadowlands, the WoW team didn't want to touch Covenant abilities or legendaries mid-season because that would be a big insult in the face of so-called meaningful choice that they were trying to push. It's one excuse to say that the WoW team didn't have to put together another borrowed power system. It's a different excuse, and still an excuse, that meta-slaving won't feel as penalizing as it did in the expansions past. And, you know, really, if you think I'm wrong, let's talk about Legion legendaries in patch 7.0. Evokers need to be especially ready, because they're a reason why a good chunk of people are going to pick up Dragonflight in the first place. They are coming along nicely, and in a very recent post, Evoker healers are going to have their healing range increased from 25 to 30 yards in a future build. The WoW team still wants to create a design space where a powerful mid-range healer can live, but the clock's ticking. By the time Dragonflight launches, crafting orders need to be good to go. Now, I've been trying to put a spotlight on this. As a new feature, it's more than a little bit scary that it's not even testable yet. No one's going to want to run into bugs or exploits that cause gold or items to be lost. Dragon riding will also need to be almost perfect, barring a few tweaks. There might be a few thousand beta testers right now, but when hundreds of thousands of players try out dragon riding for the first time during week 1, takes will be had, and the WoW team will need to respond to that very quickly. I'm stopping short though of saying that, hey, maybe they should just allow regular flying at the start because, well, 1, that trivializes the point of getting dragon riding glyphs, and 2, bots. This week's build finally addressed keyboard controls a little bit, so I plan on trying that out and giving feedback. It all comes to a head when Season 1 finally begins. By this time, classes are locked in, but hotfixes have become more and more elaborate. Season 1 might begin in December, it might be in January, but hopefully well before that, we'll at least have seen tier set bonuses. Haven't seen those at all yet, which really compounds with the concerns about class and talent balance. It'd be great to learn how the creation catalyst in Dragonflight works, or how quickly players can make them crafted epics. We haven't started Raid or Mythic Plus testing yet. We will, okay, but there's only so much time between now and launch and the season starting. I'm sure that I've missed more than a few items, and you can share your concerns in a comment, and that's the show. Regardless of what happens in Dragonflightville next week, the news is going to feel dominated by Wrath of the Lich King Classic's launch. This is going to be like a launch party, races to world first repeats, news and drama and more are going to drown out what's going on in modern WoW, and that is fine by me. A release like this ought to be given its room to breathe, but you can still count on me bringing up more WoW and Dragonflight commentary as news rolls in. For now though, let's give a warm thanks to all of those who joined me on stream this week for some Dragonflight beta giveaways. The experience was amazing with only a few small hiccups, and we got to meet a bunch of new people and bots too, but that's totally okay, that's how it goes. So I want to thank you all for joining me for that, and I hope to do more of those in the future. To our patrons, you guys keep the lights on and the coffee pot filled, and we've got a newcomer! Thank you, Brian, for your pledge, and thank you, viewer, for making it to the end. The stream popped off this week thanks to the beta giveaways, but I always enjoy chatting with you all as we enjoy a beverage. Coffee with Soul happens every Tuesday through Thursday, starting at 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content and to stay on top of the news and, well, to help me out. This week was crazy. I'm thankful for your time, and I hope to see you again soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.